there comes a moment in every relationship dynamic, a moment so subtle that most people miss it, a moment when everything shifts, not because you begged harder, not because you explained yourself better, not because you tried to prove your love one more time, but because you stopped. You see, when someone has an avoidant nature, their deepest fear is not losing you in the way you think. Their deepest fear is losing themselves. So when the pressure rises, when emotions intensify, when expectations grow, they instinctively pull away. And what most people do in response is chase. They push harder, they try to close the distance. They call, text, explain, plead, negotiate. But here is the paradox of human psychology. The more you chase someone who fears closeness, the faster they run. Yet the exact moment an avoidant begins to desperately want you back is not when you fight for their attention. It is when your energy changes. The moment you reclaim your power, the moment you stop orbiting their life and start building your own universe, because suddenly something powerful happens inside their mind. For the first time, they feel the silence. For the first time, they feel the absence. For the first time, they wonder, did I lose someone who truly cared about me? Understand this. People rarely value what they believe will always be there. But when your presence was once constant and suddenly becomes rare, something awakens in them: curiosity, reflection, even longing. But this is where most people misunderstand the game of life and love. The goal is not to manipulate someone into wanting you back. The goal is to become the version of yourself that no longer needs them to feel complete. Because when you reach that state, your energy transforms. You walk differently, you speak differently. You carry yourself with a quiet certainty that says, I am enough. And that energy is magnetic, not because you're trying to attract them, but because you're finally aligned with your own value. You see, the universe responds to congruence. When your actions, your beliefs, and your identity align, you create a force that people can feel without you saying a single word. And that's when the shift happens. The avoidant begins to feel something unfamiliar, not pressure, not expectation, but respect for your strength. And suddenly the distance they once wanted now feels uncomfortable. The silence becomes loud. Your absence becomes loud. Your absence becomes noticeable. And the person who once ran from closeness begins to move toward it. But here is the most important truth. By the time this moment happens, you are no longer the same person. You are stronger. You are wiser. You are emotionally free. And now you have a choice. You can welcome them back into a healthier dynamic, or you can recognize that the greatest gift this experience gave you was not their return. It was your transformation. Because the real victory in life is not getting someone back. The real victory is becoming someone who knows their worth so deeply that they never abandon themselves for love again. And when you reach that place, whether they return or not, you win. There is a powerful shift that happens the moment you stop chasing someone who has been pulling away. Most people believe that if they try harder, love harder, explain more, and prove their devotion, the other person will finally see their value and come closer. But human psychology often works in the opposite direction. When someone with avoidant tendencies feels pursued too intensely, their instinct is to protect their independence by creating distance. The more energy they feel coming toward them, the more they step back. When you stop chasing, something remarkable happens. The emotional pressure disappears. The constant messages, the attempts to fix things, the long explanations, those all fade away. What replaces them is space. And space is something an avoidant person both craves and fears. They crave it because it gives them room to breathe, but they also fear what that space might reveal when the noise of pursuit disappears. For a long time, your presence may have felt guaranteed to them. They knew that if they pulled away, you would reach out. If they stayed silent, you would fill the silence. If they were distant, you would try to close the gap. In that dynamic, they never had to confront the possibility of truly losing you because your pursuit reassured them that you would always remain. But when you stop chasing, that reassurance vanishes. Suddenly, the pattern they relied on no longer exists. The expected message doesn't come, the emotional reaction they were used to receiving isn't there, the dynamic that once felt predictable now feels uncertain. And uncertainty has a way of waking people up. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by your presence, they begin to notice your absence. Instead of trying to escape emotional pressure, they start to wonder why the pressure disappeared. Questions quietly begin to form in their mind. They may not say them out loud, but internally they begin asking themselves what changed. They might start reflecting on the connection they once had with you, remembering moments they previously overlooked. When you were chasing them, your energy was focused on pulling them closer. But when you stop chasing, your energy returns to you. You start investing in your own life, your own growth, your own peace. You begin rebuilding your sense of identity outside of the relationship. That shift is powerful because it changes the emotional balance. Now you are no longer communicating desperation or fear of losing them. Instead, your behavior communicates stability, self-respect, and independence. These qualities naturally command respect because they show that your happiness does not depend entirely on someone else's attention or approval. Ironically, it is this very shift that often sparks curiosity in the avoidant person. They may start paying closer attention to what you are doing, how you are living, and whether you have truly moved on. What once felt predictable now feels uncertain, and that uncertainty can create a pull they did not feel before. Stopping the chase is not about playing games or manipulating emotions. It is about reclaiming your dignity and emotional balance. It is about recognizing that your value does not increase by pursuing someone who continually pulls away. When you stop chasing, you step out of a cycle that was draining your energy and step back into your own strength. And that is often the exact moment when the person who once distanced themselves begins to truly feel the impact of losing your presence. There is a profound transformation that occurs when your sense of self-worth becomes unshakable. At the beginning of many relationships, people unknowingly place their value in the hands of the other person. They measure their worth by how quickly someone replies, how much affection they receive, or how often they are chosen. When someone with avoidant tendencies senses this dependence, even if it is subtle, it can create pressure. That pressure quietly tells them they are responsible for another person's emotional stability, and that responsibility can feel overwhelming. But everything changes the moment your self-worth stops depending on their approval. True self-worth is not loud, dramatic, or defensive. It is quiet certainty. It is the calm understanding that your value exists whether someone recognizes it or not. When you reach this state, you no longer seek validation through constant reassurance, attention, or emotional confirmation. Instead of asking, "Why aren't they choosing me?" your mindset shifts to something far more powerful. "I choose myself." This inner shift transforms the entire dynamic. Your energy becomes grounded and steady rather than anxious or reactive. You stop overanalyzing their behavior, stop trying to decode every small signal, and stop adjusting yourself just to maintain their interest. You begin living according to your own standards rather than shaping your identity around someone else's comfort zone. Avoidant individuals are often extremely sensitive to emotional expectations. When they sense that someone needs them in order to feel worthy, it can activate their instinct to withdraw, not because they don't care, but because the weight of being someone's emotional anchor can feel suffocating to them. However, when your self-worth becomes solid, that pressure disappears. You are no longer asking them to complete you. You are not silently demanding that they validate your importance. Instead, you stand firmly in your own identity. You become someone who appreciates connection but does not rely on it for survival. This kind of energy is deeply attractive because it communicates strength. It tells the other person without a single word that you are capable of loving deeply without losing yourself. It shows that your life is meaningful and fulfilling with or without their participation. That level of emotional independence often creates a sense of respect that wasn't present before. Avoidant personalities tend to value autonomy and freedom. When they see someone who embodies those same qualities, someone who is emotionally secure and self-sufficient, it changes how they perceive that person. Instead of feeling trapped by expectations, They begin to see a partner who stands beside them rather than leaning on them. And respect is a powerful foundation for attraction. When your self-worth is unshakable, you also stop tolerating behavior that undermines your dignity. You no longer chase after inconsistency or accept crumbs of attention just to keep someone in your life. You naturally raise the standard for how you are treated, not through ultimatums or confrontation, but through your willingness to walk away from what does not honor your value. This quiet strength can awaken something in the avoidant person. They begin to recognize that the person they once assumed would always be there is no longer seeking validation. Instead, they see someone who is grounded, confident, and emotionally whole. And that realization can change how they see you entirely. There is a profound difference between expressing emotion and creating emotional pressure. Many people believe that the more they explain their feelings, the more the other person will finally understand them. They think that if they communicate their pain clearly enough, the relationship will somehow return to harmony. But when someone has avoidant tendencies, intense emotional discussions can feel overwhelming rather than connecting. Avoidant individuals often struggle with emotional intensity because it activates their instinct to protect themselves. When conversations become heavy with expectation, urgency, or emotional demand, their nervous system interprets it as a threat to their independence. Instead of leaning closer, they begin searching for ways to escape the situation. When emotional pressure fills the space between two people, the avoidant mind starts associating the relationship with stress. Even if the emotions being expressed come from love, the intensity itself can feel suffocating to someone who fears being emotionally engulfed. But everything changes when silence replaces that pressure. Silence is not the same as indifference. It is not punishment, and it is not withdrawal out of bitterness. It is the deliberate choice to step out of a cycle where every interaction revolves around explaining, convincing, or proving your feelings. It is the calm decision to allow space instead of filling every gap with emotional urgency. When that silence appears, the entire emotional environment shifts. Instead of being confronted with intense conversations or repeated attempts to fix the relationship, the avoidant person suddenly experiences calm. The tension that once surrounded the connection disappears. They are no longer bracing themselves for another emotional discussion or preparing to defend their need for distance. At first, this silence can feel relieving to them. It gives them the breathing room they naturally crave. But over time, something interesting begins to happen. The silence creates space for reflection. When emotional pressure is present, people focus on escaping the discomfort in the moment. Their mind is occupied with defending themselves or protecting their boundaries. But when that pressure disappears, their mind is free to wander back to the connection itself. They begin to think about the conversations that used to happen, the presence that used to be there, the energy that once filled their daily life. The absence of emotional demands allows curiosity to replace defensiveness. Instead of reacting, they begin observing. They may wonder why the dynamic suddenly changed. They might notice that the emotional intensity they once felt is no longer being directed at them. The quiet can lead them to revisit memories they previously pushed aside while trying to maintain distance. Silence also communicates a powerful message without words. It shows that you are capable of regulating your own emotions rather than relying on constant discussion to feel heard. It reflects emotional maturity and self-control, qualities that naturally command respect. This calm presence shifts how they perceive you. You are no longer the source of emotional overwhelm. Instead, you become someone who embodies stability and inner balance. The absence of pressure removes the barrier that once caused them to retreat. And within that quiet space, curiosity has room to grow. Reflection has room to deepen, and the avoidant mind has the freedom to reconsider the connection from a place of calm rather than resistance. There is a remarkable transformation that happens when you become emotionally independent. Emotional independence does not mean you stop caring about others or that you close your heart to connection. It means your inner stability no longer depends on whether someone stays, leaves, calls, or pulls away. Your emotional state becomes rooted in your own life your own purpose, and your own growth. In many relationships, especially when one person has avoidant tendencies, the balance of emotional dependence can quietly tilt in one direction. One person begins investing more energy, more attention, and more emotional focus into the relationship. Their mood rises and falls based on the other person's behavior. A message brings relief, silence brings anxiety, and distance creates a deep sense of loss. Avoidant individuals are extremely sensitive to this kind of emotional reliance. Even when they care deeply about someone, they may begin to feel responsible for that person's emotional stability. Over time, that responsibility can feel heavy. Instead of feeling like a partner in a relationship, they may feel like the emotional center holding everything together. When that happens, their instinct is often to create space. But the moment you develop emotional independence, the entire dynamic begins to shift. Your life stops revolving around their presence or absence. You begin investing our energy into your own growth, passions, friendships, and personal fulfillment. Your happiness is no longer suspended in the uncertainty of the relationship. You start waking up with goals that have nothing to do with whether they text you or not. Your focus turns toward building a life that excites you, challenges you, and strengthens you. You begin creating experiences that nourish your spirit and expand your identity beyond the relationship. This transformation is powerful because it changes the emotional energy you carry. Instead of projecting neediness or quiet desperation, you project calm confidence. Your interactions become lighter because you are no longer trying to extract reassurance from every conversation. You are present, but you are not dependent. Avoidant individuals often find this kind of energy far more comfortable. When they no longer feel that someone's happiness rests entirely on their shoulders, they experience a sense of relief. The relationship stops feeling like an emotional obligation and starts feeling like a choice again, and choice is extremely important to someone who values autonomy. When they observe that you are capable of living a full and meaningful life without relying on them, something interesting happens in their perception. They begin to see you not as someone who needs them, but as someone who enriches their life. Your presence becomes an addition rather than a demand. This often sparks a renewed sense of interest and curiosity. They may start paying closer attention to what you are doing, how you are growing, and what kind of person you are becoming. The independence you demonstrate communicates strength, resilience, and self-respect. At the same time, emotional independence allows you to maintain your dignity. You no longer feel compelled to chase attention or tolerate inconsistency just to preserve the connection. You interact from a place of stability rather than fear. When someone becomes emotionally independent, their energy becomes balanced and grounded. They love freely, but they do not lose themselves in the process. They appreciate connection, but they remain whole on their own. And that quiet strength can transform the way an avoidant person begins to see the relationship. There is a moment in many relationships when reality finally replaces assumption. For a long time, someone may believe that no matter how distant they become, the other person will still be there. They grow comfortable with the idea that the connection is permanent, that forgiveness will always come, and that the door will never truly close. This belief often shapes how they behave. When someone thinks they cannot lose you, they may take your presence for granted without even realizing it. Avoidant individuals in particular can fall into this pattern. Because they tend to withdraw when emotions become intense, they often rely on the assumption that the other person will continue reaching out. They expect that if they pull away, you will eventually come back with reassurance, patience, and renewed effort to reconnect. As long as that pattern continues, the fear of losing you never fully activates. But everything changes when the possibility of losing you becomes real. This moment does not come from threats or dramatic ultimatums. It does not come from emotional outbursts or attempts to force a reaction. Instead, it emerges quietly through your actions. When you begin stepping back, focusing on your own life, and no longer chasing after someone who keeps their distance, the emotional landscape begins to shift. At first, the avoidant person may assume that your silence is temporary. They might believe that eventually you will return to the familiar pattern of reaching out and restoring the connection. But as Me passes and your energy remains steady and self-directed. Something deeper begins to register. The certainty they once felt about your presence starts to dissolve. For the first time, they begin to sense that your absence might not be a phase. It might be a real consequence of the distance that has grown between you. This realization can be unsettling because it forces them to confront something they may have avoided for a long time. The possibility that they truly could lose someone who cared about them. Human beings often recognize value most clearly when they face the possibility of losing it. When something has always been available, its importance can fade into the background of everyday life. But when that presence begins to disappear, awareness sharpens. Memories start resurfacing. Conversations, shared experiences, and emotional moments come back into focus. They begin reflecting on the connection from a perspective they may not have allowed themselves before. Instead of focusing on maintaining distance, they begin considering what that distance might ultimately cost them. The fear of loss is a powerful emotional force. It has the ability to shift priorities and awaken feelings that were previously suppressed. When someone realizes that the person who once invested deeply in them may be moving forward without them, it can trigger a new level of reflection. They may start questioning whether they misunderstood the depth of your commitment or whether they underestimated the impact of their own distance. The comfort they once felt in knowing you would always be there is replaced by uncertainty, and uncertainty often brings clarity. Suddenly, the connection that once felt safe to take for granted becomes something that could disappear entirely. That realization can create a powerful emotional awakening, where the avoidant person begins to recognize the true value of what they might be losing. One of the most transformative shifts in any relationship dynamic happens when you stop waiting and start evolving. Waiting places your life in a state of pause. It quietly sends the message to yourself that your happiness, your peace, and your future depend on whether someone else changes their behavior. Over time, this state of waiting can drain your energy because your focus remains fixed on something outside your control. When someone has avoidant tendencies, many people fall into the trap of believing that if they are patient enough, loving enough, and understanding enough, the other person will eventually change. They stay emotionally invested while hoping that one day the avoidant partner will suddenly become more open, more consistent, and more committed. But the truth is that waiting rarely creates transformation. Growth happens through action, experience, and personal evolution. And the moment you stop waiting for someone else's growth and start focusing on your own, your entire life begins to move forward again. This shift is powerful because it redirects your attention to what you can actually control: your mindset, your goals, your habits, and the way you show up in the world. Instead of analyzing someone else's behavior, you begin investing your time in becoming stronger, wiser, and more fulfilled. You start learning new things. You pursue goals that once sat on the sidelines. You reconnect with passions that may have been neglected while you were consumed by the relationship. Your world begins expanding again, and with that expansion comes a renewed sense of identity. You are no longer defined by the role you played in someone else's emotional journey. Instead, you become someone who is constantly growing. This kind of transformation naturally changes the energy you project. People can sense when someone is evolving. There. Is a quiet confidence that comes from progress. When you are focused on building a meaningful life, your conversations, your choices, and your presence reflect that momentum. For someone with avoidant tendencies, this shift can be deeply noticeable. They may have once viewed you through the lens of the old dynamic, the person who waited, who chased, who tried to hold the connection together. But when you begin evolving into a stronger version of yourself, that old image no longer matches the reality they see. Your growth introduces something new into their perception: respect and curiosity. They begin to see that you did not remain stuck in the past. Instead of staying emotionally frozen while hoping they would return, you moved forward with courage and determination. That kind of personal evolution often commands attention because it reflects inner strength, It also changes the balance of attraction. When someone sees that your life is expanding and that you are becoming a more confident, fulfilled person, they may begin to reconsider the connection. Not because you waited for them, but because you transformed yourself in ways they did not expect. At the same time, this growth benefits you regardless of their response. By choosing evolution over waiting, you reclaim your time, your focus, and your emotional power. Your life becomes driven by purpose rather than uncertainty. You are no longer standing still in the hope that someone else will change. You are moving forward, building a stronger version of yourself with every step. And that transformation reshapes not only how others see you, but how you see yourself. Thank you for taking the time to listen and invest in your growth. May your journey forward be filled with strength, clarity, and unstoppable purpose. Goodbye for now, and remember, the moment you honor your own worth, life begins to honor you back.